Welcome back to the CEO Journey. You're joining us for the third episode. Today we've got a really special one. We've got our first ever guest on the podcast. He goes by the name of Louis Bollard. Thank you for joining us today, Louis. We really appreciate it. So if you could just briefly introduce yourself to the listeners who probably don't know you, that would be great.
Yeah, so hi guys, my name is Louis. I'm an entrepreneur from Bath. I have started Host a Fan, which is a community of rugby fans who host each other on away trips that we can kind of like get into a little bit more. And before that, I ran a previous startup, which was a healthy protein snack. And I'm actually an alumni from University of Bath as well, from both undergraduate BBA course and more recently the MBA course as well.
Yeah, I think we actually, Joe and I met you at the Invictus business event, wasn't it? Where I guess startup entrepreneurs at the university pitch their ideas to try and receive equity-free funding. So it was good to meet you there. You were a panelist, weren't you? The guest speaker. So we learned a bit about you there. Yeah. But I guess it's the best place to start is, I guess, learning about your earlier life, about your upbringing. You know, who was young Louis Bollard?
Good question. I think I guess I was always kind of subconsciously, without being aware, interested in entrepreneurship and business and stuff like that. Obviously in the UK from a young age, you don't really get taught it as such, so it doesn't really get codified. But yeah, at a young age, I was doing the kind of typical things that I guess young entrepreneurs would do. So like, I remember on like Halloween getting loads of money, so going out like 2 or 3 nights if I could, when you'd go around, and then kind of like doing car washes in the summer, in summer holidays and stuff. I remember doing that with one of my friends and getting some money that way. What was the other thing? Oh, again, we used to do like carol singing, and we got quite a lot of money doing carol singing as well. So I guess in like those little ways, I was really interested in just kind of making my own money. And yeah, saying that I did still work. So I did like a paper round, like typically when just as soon as I got to like 13, 14, and then worked like part-time in a school alongside my like GCSEs and A-levels and stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't really say like I was ever big into kind of reading about it or studying it or watching videos and stuff like that. It was more just a natural instinct that I wanted to do, really.
Right.
Yeah, that's really, and I guess just the next kind of question to follow on from that is, obviously you've kind of talked to just really briefly about your protein company and then also Host a Fan. So if you could kind of just go into a bit more detail just about what they both are, and I guess kind of quite importantly, I guess just kind of how those ideas started, how they came about, and then I guess just the kind of development of those businesses since those ideas.
Yeah, so firstly, sorry, kind of just before the protein business. So while I was at university, I ran a startup as well, which was very kind of like, what would you say, cash generative. It was quite profitable. The summer before I came to university, I went to like Barcelona and I saw like those flying. Have you ever seen those like flying gadgets that kind of float down from the air? People like fling them up in the air with
Yeah.
So I saw those in Barcelona the summer before uni, and I was like mesmerized, and I was like, they're pretty cool. But I've never seen them obviously in the UK, so I imported like 5,000-6,000 of those from China and got like a little license which allowed me to sell those. And that was really nice because it was quite easy to fit alongside my studies, and like you could just go out on a weekend for a couple of hours or whatever, and there was no kind of commitment and stuff. So yeah, that was good. That was kind of my first taste, and then kind of properly, I guess. And then when I finished university, I made a friend from. So sorry, before I went to university, I went to Peter Jones Enterprise Academy, which was a enterprise academy set up by Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, and kind of met like a load of young entrepreneurs and aspiring and enterprising individuals there. So from there, when I finished university, one of those had actually gone and set up that protein brand. Only probably about 6 months in, maybe. He was probably only about 3-6 months in, and basically at the end of uni came around and said, look, I've he had an investor on board by that stage, and said, we're looking for somebody to come in and sell it and run like the marketing and sales side. So we want that person to be you. Would you be interested in doing it? And I was just in my last kind of 3 or 4 months at uni, so it worked out perfectly in terms of timeline. Didn't really want to go down the corporate, big company, commercial route. So yeah, took that, which was really good. It was 2 years. I was there for like 18 months, 2 years. And that was all, to be honest, that was just like a crash course in everything entrepreneurship. We were doing absolutely everything. It was a massive, massive role in terms of like literally just the 2 of us. But we were normally just work on the branding and stuff and get somebody else to produce it and supply it and all the rest of it. But we literally had a factory where we'd make them ourselves. So part of my role was literally making them, ordering the ingredients, designing the ingredients, designing the packaging, all manner of stuff. Website stuff, getting them into shops and dealing with customers. So yeah, that was like 18 months, I'd say. And then during that period, I kind of had the idea for what is now Hostafan, because in 2017 there was a Champions League match between Borussia Dortmund and Monaco, and the supporters made this mutual exchange of hosting, because like the game got delayed by a day. So that had given me the idea of that, and I was like, oh, why is that only a thing like in an emergency when the game's been delayed, and why isn't it just a standard thing? Yeah, so that's what then inspired me to create. I called it Play Away Stay Away at the start, so that's what inspired me to create Play Away Stay Away. It also reminded me, and what gave me the real vision for it, was that I'd used a cycling community that does the same thing the summer before. So I'd stayed with like a number of cyclists who were hosting me along a particular route, and with the idea that I would then host them if they ever needed to be in my location, or anyone else on the platform was in my location on a bike road.
So you've talked about, I guess, a bit before that, your startup at university, and I guess what I just want to understand is, how difficult was it to balance your studies whilst trying to build and grow that startup? And I guess, did it force you to challenge society's, conventional route of going to university, getting a degree, all that jazz? Did you ever have that moment where you've felt like, dropping out of university and pursuing that full time, or I guess, did you just enjoy education as well?
Yeah, I'd probably say more the latter. Like I enjoyed doing both of them alongside each other, and the way that they complemented each other. And it was never really the kind of scale or magnitude that I'd be like, oh, I need to stop and do this full time. It was just it was almost a part-time job that paid very well and was very good for teaching me this, that, and the other. So yeah, it wasn't like the Zuckerberg drops out of Harvard and starts it and never looks back kind of thing. It was more, it was just a really good experience for me. And what I think I liked was that I was selling them myself. So part of that is just a sales skill and this chat, and you learn how to interact and engage with a whole plethora of people, from like old people who want them for their grandchildren to the actual 4 or 5 year old kids who see them and like are amazed and then beg their parents for them. So it was quite a nice experience in that sense. Wow. Yeah, I don't think I didn't really put 2 and 2 together in terms of, doing coursework around it or applying business logic. There was a stage where I thought, how would you expand a business like that, so it's not just me going out on any given evening in the dark selling them? And I think it came down to a kind of franchise model whereby I would sell them to individual sellers across the UK, which I did a little bit of experience with. So I got a few people selling them in various locations, like on bonfire night and stuff like that, and then the Christmas markets. But it was just more challenging than it was profitable, really, to do it that way.
Okay. And you talked about the Peter Jones Business Academy. How did that come about?
I think when I left school, I just wasn't completely sure on that route of, go to uni, get a degree, go and get a job. And like, like what you say there, like the societal route. So I just was quite open and quite keen to look at other things that were out there. And then that had only just started up, I think, like 2 or 3 years before. And yeah, I came across it, applied for it, and they gave me an interview. And then, yeah, I got on it with, there was probably about 50 other young entrepreneurs and stuff. So it was quite a small group of us.
And I guess just back to kind of host to fan, if you kind of just share kind of what stage that's at the moment, because you've said kind of about how you came up with the idea and kind of how it's developed, but if you kind of share kind of what stage it's at, but then also kind of your vision for host to fan in the, I guess, next 3 to 5 years or something.
Yeah, so at the moment, I'd say I'm pretty much kind of MVP level. So I've got a website there where people can go on and create their profiles. They can message each other on site. You can view other people's properties like you can on Airbnb, and you can then request to come and stay with somebody for a certain fixture or whatever. You can leave feedback and stuff like that on there. So I'm at MVP stage without any real strong traction. So I've had a few use cases and a few coming up hopefully, but not really any kind of concrete what would you say, like revenue growth or whatever. And I think mainly that's because of COVID. I wasn't really able to do much during the first kind of 18 months or so, which is why I did the MBA essentially at Bath alongside it. And then since then I've kind of been going for a year or so now, maybe, just trying to bootstrap it, trying to pivot, trying to learn. In that time, I've rebranded it from Play Away, Stay Away, I mentioned earlier, to Host a Fan. That mainly came from like customers and what they were saying to me, and a lot of them were joking that Host a Fan had Play Away, Stay Away had negative connotations of kind of cheating and staying with wife and stuff, which I agreed to. Which is, I think, one of the key lessons in entrepreneurship is just being willing to adapt and learn. So I sat down with some guy who's like a commercial marketing manager for a design firm or something like that, and he basically said to me, like, he was like, oh, I really like the idea, I like the concept, I think you got a good website and a product. He's just like, I just think about the name, because Play Away Stay Away isn't really doing it for me or whatever. And within about a week or so, I was like, I kind of let it sit. I spoke to a couple of other people, and then within a week I changed it and I decided on Host a Fan and the branding and stuff like that. So my vision is just to replicate the experiences I had on that cycling community, and on the use cases that I've had so far, where both sides really like it. Both sides have got an interest, because I'm saving you money when you come to my location, and you're saving money when you go on your own away trips. So yeah, it's kind of like mutual win-win, and it's good for the sport as a whole, in terms of increasing audiences and reducing the average age and making it more accessible, essentially. So yeah, that's the vision. And I think what's quite important to realize is that there's also then potential to do that in a lot of other areas. So where Airbnb is moving further and further away from being a kind of low cost person to person communal model, it then creates an opportunity for people with a like-minded mindset, whether that's around rugby, whether it's around cricket, whether it's around football, or even like other things like photography or language learning or religious belief or whatever it might be. So that's where I wanted to go in 3-5 years, is to have several, like Host a Fan, I'm working on a similar basis now for Host a Christian, which would be a same for kind of young Christians or Christians of any age really, to share with each other, and running events even. So again, I've got like one for half marathons and marathons and stuff like that.
So yeah, that's really interesting. Have you received mentorship throughout your journey, you know, getting Host a Fan to the MVP stage? Is that now? And if you have, Louis, like, how important would you say that guidance and you know, the value of having a mentor there to help you is?
Yeah, so quickly I have, one in like an official investor capacity, so he put some money in initially at the start, and obviously is therefore invested into what I'm doing. But then I've had kind of several other people along the way who I didn't know, who have just come into contact with, who've kind of offered and said, look, if ever you need some mentorship or some chats, I'm here and I'm happy to help you, kind of thing. So that's been really nice. I think with the actual investor, that was it just gave me that confidence to actually step out there on my own and go, you know what, I'm going to give this a go, and be able to kind of solidify that, and obviously like financially cover the initial costs of setting up. So that was really quite powerful, quite important. It's just good to have somebody to lean on, to share ideas with. I've got a couple of other people who I use a bit more informally and like a bit more locally in Bath. Who again, like, just helpful to provide a bit of strategic support, because when you are an entrepreneur and when it's just you, it comes down to that, and it can be quite challenging sometimes without a co-founder to bounce stuff off of and kind of mix ideas with. Having said that about the value of a mentor, like I always tell people, it's still your decision at the end of the day. So you can have a mentor and stuff like that, and they can advise you this way or that, but for every mentor who says like, oh, you need to do your customer research 100%, like research the market inside out, you'll get one who goes, don't worry about customer research at all. Like, customer research is not really going to give you the answer. The answer has to come from within or whatever. So like, it always has to be from your own path, really.
So would you say it's best to, like, especially in terms of mentoring, keeping it quite a small circle, because I guess you don't want conflicting ideas, do you?
Yeah, exactly. A small circle, maybe 2 or 3 people that you can really trust. I think that's all you need.
Yeah, and I guess you talked about receiving investment for your idea. I guess a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs find difficulty in raising the necessary funds to be able to take their concept to a proper business. How did you go about raising funding for your idea? And what were the difficulties and challenges you faced whilst doing that?
I think, like, looking back now, I'd almost say I didn't go through like a funding round as such, like compared to what I see people now, and now I've learned a lot more about entrepreneurship financing. Mine was just very much a kind of angel investor who knew me from my previous business, so knew me from the protein brand, and was like, I think that's a really good idea. I'd be happy to put some money in if you wanted to do it. So I was like, well, fair enough. Let's give it a go. So yeah, it wasn't really kind of like a round of preparing a pitch deck. I did prepare them a kind of 2 or 3 page PDF on what it was, what the idea was and stuff. But I think because we had that personal relationship anyway, he trusted me a lot more, and he was quite willing to do it, and he quite liked me, obviously. So yeah, that was a really, really, really nice kind of help, obviously. And then what was the other kind of like sub question to that?
It was just say if you had any challenges around raising funding, because I guess you're young yourself and you were even younger before that, and I guess age can be an obstacle to these things, can't it? Joe and I have that. People don't take us seriously sometimes, and it's really annoying, but it's the case. So I guess, was age a factor? And I guess as a broader question, how do you overcome the obstacle of factors such as age being a detriment to your progression?
I think I think obviously age is one, but then I'd always kind of encourage, especially young entrepreneurs, that at this age you're as kind of adaptable and as willing to learn and as free and flexible to do it at the moment. So I know investors do look at that and kind of hedge their bets and say, well, it's a higher chance of it not actually taking off or whatever. But then really importantly, I think you've got also then look at the nice side of that from the entrepreneur's perspective, is that you can be quite flexible, you can be quite free, you can be like, I can keep my costs. I've kept my costs so low, and I've only been able to do that because I've not got a family to support, I've not got a mortgage to pay off and all the rest of it. So I guess to overcome those challenges, you've just got to emphasize those points to entrepreneurs, to investors, sorry, and just kind of like highlight the fact that, well, actually you're willing to give it the best years of your career, and this is what you really want to do. The other challenges I've had is being a solo founder. So a lot of people are kind of, they just get quite reluctant with that, and they know about the pace, which is catch-22, because I'm like, well, fine, and give me some money to be able to hire a co-founder, and then we'll have a team of 2 and whatever. So yeah, that one's been a bit tricky. Again, it's a bit harder to get over that one for me, because I can't pretend I've got a co-founder or whatever. I think the only thing on that is you can almost argue that, at least with a solo founder, you're not going to fall out with anyone. So like co-founders often will fall out. And there's an amplitude of evidence on that. So you can just highlight the fact that you can't really fall out with yourself.
Oh yeah,
that's been really good. And I guess just one more kind of question from me is you've kind of already talked about kind of some of the challenges and also kind of the benefits of just being an entrepreneur in your kind of entrepreneurial journey. But if you could kind of just give us maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges, but also kind of the biggest, I guess, best things that you kind of experienced just in your general entrepreneurial journey.
I think the biggest challenge, well, I'll kind of like break it down into the 2 startups I've really been involved in. So biggest challenge with the protein brand was the fact that we didn't have a clear kind of point in the market. So we had, like I said, we had 3 different people: the investor, the co-founder, plus me, who had different views on exactly what the brand and the product stood for. And then aligned to that was the product that they had come up with. Like I said earlier in the conversation, we were actually making ourselves. The product was absolutely dire, like it was awful. The initial product that I had to come in and sell. So that was obviously a challenge in itself. I was okay because I wasn't too emotionally attached to having developed the actual product. I was able to quite quickly realize and learn and tell them that it was awful, and they were very blind to that. So trying to fight those in-house kind of like political balance struggles was quite challenging. But again, like a really good learning curve and really good experience for myself. Biggest challenge I've had with Host a Fan is obviously the pandemic, which just explains it, just says it for itself. Like, weird kind of plan for an 18-month period from when I started without having obviously a global pandemic that shut down sports and hospitality and travel. So trying to bootstrap and maintain the vision through that was difficult, but then also just trying to convince people of the trust element, and loads of people think it's a good concept and they like the idea of it, but actually getting them to sign up and commit to say, yes, I will host someone, or yes, I will use it to go and stay with somebody, I can't really explain why. It's just been like the biggest challenge that I've had so far. I think it's perhaps familiarity and knowing other people who've used it and are on there and stuff like that breeds other people going on there. But yeah, that's the 2. I think reward wise is just when you know you've made your own money, and you've done something yourself. When you sometimes just step back and look at a few of the things that you've done and what you've developed is quite rewarding. And also for me personally, I really enjoy the element of doing a little bit of everything. And like today, I was literally working for hours on the website, on the Google console, on really technical stuff that 2 years ago I'd never have had a clue about. Like, I'm not technical at all. But then also kind of creating videos for the marketing outreach, doing calling up members and stuff like that. So it's quite a multifaceted thing.
So how important would you say, I guess, enjoying the journey is, enjoying the process of actually building something that potentially could have legs, is for your overall drive and motivation in business?
I think, to be honest, I think that's everything, especially when you're a solo founder and you're not, like, I'll put my hands up, I'm not kind of like making revenue and stuff like that now. So having that vision and that belief in, like what you said, this could have so much potential in 2-3 years is the only thing that I wouldn't really be doing it otherwise. And not even financial potential, just potential for people to use it and experience it and enjoy it. So it's like, you can't really underestimate how important that is, really. And
I potentially assume that you go through rough patches yourself, trying to build this. What, I guess, motivates you to push through those rocky times when you might think, what's the point? Why am I doing this? I've got a lot of stress, got a lot on my back. How do you push through that?
I think having a kind of very relaxed and confident outlook anyway. So like I'm generally quite laissez-faire and like trusting in the process, and what will be, and like not being too stressed and anxious. I'll admit, like anyone who was on that further down that spectrum of anxiety and stress and worry than me would have easily given up by now. They just couldn't have. And even people like say to me, like, I don't know how you've managed to kind of, still stick true to that vision and that belief. So that, and I think for me, because I used that cycling platform before, I just know instinctively, like I had honestly probably the best holiday I've ever had. Had amazing experiences with hosts, with people who were complete strangers before I got there, and now it's at the point where I'd literally go out of my way to host people back to kind of reciprocate that. So I think that for me is what's again like kept me really clear that there is a market there. Whether, as I alluded to earlier, whether that market's actually in rugby or not, in a different sport or in a different area, is a different thing. But just knowing that there is some opportunity for a like-minded version of Airbnb, which is more based on reciprocity and hospitality than it is on commercialization.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's really good. And I guess kind of one more just question from me is, I think a lot of people listening will kind of be potentially entrepreneur and have that kind of flair, but not kind of have that, I guess, as you said, confidence to take that step. And I guess kind of as you finish university and now you're kind of solely working on Host Fan, I'm just wondering what kind of you'd say to people who were, I guess, just a bit too afraid to take that leap into entrepreneurship and kind of just see the 9 to 5 as, I guess, boring, but also, I guess, a reliable kind of income stream, and just kind of I guess like what you'd say to someone who's a bit too scared to take the risk.
What would you say to 18-year-old Louis Bollard?
I think I'd say just do it. Like just take that step. I'd say there's never a wrong time to do something. Like I'm 29 now, and if I looked back, if I'd never done anything, I'd probably look back and go, oh, I should have done it when I was 18. And then when you're 25, you look back and go, oh, I should have done it when I was 22. And like when I'm 40, I should have gone, oh, I should have done it when I was 29. That was my prime time. Like I was absolutely perfect stage to do it. So you can always find an excuse not to do something. If you really want to do it, you've just got to do it. Take that first step. And then learn along the way, because it's the same principle with everything, but there's never a wrong time to get started if that's what you actually really want to do.
So on this podcast, we're big about giving advice, and obviously from people like yourself who are in the trenches and pursuing their entrepreneurial journeys. What would you say is your number one piece of advice that you would give to any aspiring entrepreneur? Like one piece of advice.
Be adaptable. I think in 2 words it would be adaptable. I think that's probably the best way to summarize it, because you've got to be determined and you've got to be persistent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's no point being determined and persistent if you're just being stubborn and like not really listening to users and not really changing anything. So I think it's mixing that persistence and determination with adaptability. So being able to go like, okay, this hasn't worked. Why hasn't it worked? What can I do better? Because that's how you improve, essentially.
So I guess sticking with it and being adaptable to change and pivoting and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
all like the typical stuff that they tell you, but like that is the key. Like people say persistence is the key, but if you persist with like the wrong thing without ever learning and without ever changing anything, it's not actually going to get you anywhere. Persisting with like your vision but being able to adapt it is hopefully what would actually get you there.
Well, I guess that's quite a nice place to round off this episode. Thank you once again for hopping on, Louis. It's been great to learn about your story and what you're doing now, and hopefully everything goes well, and we wish you the best of luck with your pursuit. And if you do you have any socials that you want to plug or anything, or Host a Fan website, if people are interested, then they can go onto your website and maybe use it.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, you can do. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so if you search for Louis Bollard, LouisBollard, probably best to reach me on there. And then from that, you'll find the website, which is www.hostafan.co. So not .co.uk or not .com, just .co. And yeah, have a little look. It's on Instagram, which is Host a Fan, and on Facebook if you search for Host a Fan as well. Yeah, thank you, Louis, for joining us.
Thanks so much, Louis.
No worries at all, gents.